What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I am DL here with another movie review. It is the month of the Hunger Games. We talked about all four Hunger Games films. We talked about the original. We talked about Catching Fire. We talked about Mockingjay Part 1. And we talked about Mockingjay Part 2. If you haven't seen my reviews for those, I'll put a link in the description below so you guys could watch them. But we are concluding talking about the Hunger Games franchise, talking about the newest prequel film that came out this past weekend, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Let's get into it. So, if you see my reviews for the previous four Hunger Games movies, you guys would know. I guess in general, I've been pretty split on them. I thought the first film was pretty good. I thought it was a solid start to the franchise. I didn't think it was anything mind blowing, but I thought the world and the characters were very interesting. And then Catching Fire came out, and I thought it was absolutely great. It's honestly have been my favorite in the franchise so far. It just fired on all cylinders for me. And then Mockingjay Part 1, which I thought was fine. I appreciated them slowing things down, to set up all the pieces for what they were going to do for Mockingjay Part 2 with the whole rebellion against the Capitol and stuff like that. So I thought that it was fine. But then Mockingjay Part 2 came out, and I thought it was one of the most disappointing finales to a younger adult novel franchise like ever. I was really let down with that, and it just left me feeling kind of indifferent about the Hunger Games franchise in general. This is coming from someone who hasn't read the books. I haven't read all the books, so I'm just mostly taking these movies from face value. So when it comes to Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I was aware that this was based on a book that came out not too long after the Hunger Games movies concluded. This was a prequel to the first Hunger Games. I think it was supposed to take place 60 years before the events of the first Hunger Games, and it was going to follow President Snow when he was younger. And I didn't really care to see that, to be honest, or read about it, because President Snow is one of the most scummiest villains we have seen in the Hunger Games mythos. So it's like, why would I care about seeing a prequel with him when we know how he's going to end up by the time he's an older man? So that's an interesting choice for them to make a book out of this. Probably the only thing that would kind of pique my interest is seeing how the Hunger Games were back in the day, and probably some stuff that will be foreshadowing for Katniss and her eventual rise to be the head of the rebellion and stuff like that. Maybe there'll be some foreshadowing here and there, but I wasn't too interested in knowing about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I had no idea that they were even going to make a movie about this, because it's been years since Mockingjay Part 2 came out, and it almost seemed like the Hunger Games franchise was pretty much done. A lot of people were starting to forget about it. I mean, it's still in the pop culture zeitgeist a little bit. I don't think it's completely forgotten, because the Hunger Games have left an impact on pop culture. Not as much as I don't think as much as Harry Potter and Twilight, but I still think Hunger Games is part of the three pillars when it comes to young adult novel franchises. So, but it is clear that after Mockingjay Part 2, you don't hear a lot of people talking about the Hunger Games as much anymore. So when they were announcing that they were going to make a movie based off of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I was pretty surprised that they were still trying to do this, because I felt like the franchise ended. And will people even care if they were gonna make this prequel film? Has the magic kind of disappeared? Who knows? But when the marketing started to rev up, it just came out of nowhere. Because I had no idea when this movie was supposed to come out. I had assumed that stuff was at a halt since the pandemic and the writers and actors strike. So had no idea when they were going to have this movie come out until this year, actually. And then you started seeing trailers, and it's like, oh, it's going to come out this November. Okay, wow, all right, well, we're in for it. So when it came to the trailers, it looked pretty good. It looked interesting. It looked different from the previous four Hunger Games films as far as its look and its cinematography and the the talent they had for the movie too. They had Viola Davis and Peter Dinklage and Rachel Zegler. So I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I'm interested in seeing what they're going to do with this. So yeah, I was looking forward to it. And then Francis Lawrence was also going to come back and direct this. He directed the last three Hunger Games films, so it's cool that they still got him back to do these movies because it seems like he's the one that really understands this world and stuff like that. Even though I also was kind of interested in getting a new vision from a different director, to see somebody else's take on the Hunger Games. But regardless of that, I was slightly looking forward to seeing this. Um, and so I did go see this opening weekend because you know, even though I was disappointed with the latter half of the previous four films, I'm still, I still am interested in the Hunger Games world. So it's like I'm curious to seeing where this will line up as far as the quality with the previous four films. Hopefully, if it gets back to the magic that the first two had, I think we'll be in for a decent film. And after walking out of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I was pleasantly surprised. I enjoyed this film quite a bit. Um, this may end up being one of my favorites in the franchise so far. I don't know if it's like my number one, but I think this is definitely, in my opinion, one of the better Hunger Games films. Um, and it's shocking that when I'm hearing the reactions to this film, a lot of people are very split on this movie. And I don't really understand the hate for this. I really don't. I don't know. It's just as someone who hasn't read the book, I didn't really know what direction the book was going to go, and how closely adapted this film was going to be. But as far as like what they presented, from a filmmaking standpoint, I thought, there was some elements in here that I thought were, the best I've seen from the Hunger Games films in general, as far as the character development and, the world and the overall concept of the Hunger Games, seeing it in its earlier stages. Like, I just found all that fascinating. And then the one thing that I didn't expect to be invested in as much is the stuff with Snow. I found it very interesting seeing Snow as a much younger man, seeing him in a different mindset than he was when we see him in, when Katniss was, there, the Katniss era, I guess I would say. But I'll say up front that I think Tom Blythe as Snow, I thought he was great. He's a star in the making. I'm just gonna say that up front. I hope to see him in more projects in the future because I found him as Snow really, really compelling and multi-layered. He it actually helped. That we're starting to see different dimensions of him. Because in face value, you would think it would be difficult to even care about this character because of how much of a terrible person he is. But it just, with this, this probably will be a hot take for people, but this is something that I instantly thought of. Like I haven't seen this much dimension for, a younger portrayal of a character since Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan or Jude Law as Dumbledore in Fantastic Beasts. Like with Tom Blythe's performance as Snow, I felt like he did a very similar thing with those two other characters, giving him more dimension, giving him more, layers and stuff like that. And there was a good portion of the movie where I forgot that he ends up being the tyrannical president he ends up being in, the previous movies, So I thought he did a great job there. And then, of course, we got to talk about Rachel Zegler playing Lucy Gray. Now, I've heard a lot of split reactions with Rachel Zegler being casted as this character. And once again, I don't know how she is in the books, but a lot of people were split, and some people thought that she didn't really fit the role. Judging this from face value, I am a Rachel Zegler fan as far as her as an actress. I know she's been through a lot of controversy as of late when it comes to the Disney stuff. I'm not here to talk about that right now. We'll save it when we talk about the Snow White remake for the Disney cast. But regardless of how I feel about her, um, outside of her stuff, her films, as a person, I can't deny that she is a talent. I do enjoy her as an actress, and I think her singing is bar none. I think she's an excellent singer, and I kind of see why they casted her as this role, because her singing does come to play a lot in this film. But I'll say I think Rachel Zegler was once again great in this film. I thought she was great as Lucy Gray. I thought the chemistry that she had with Snow in the film, probably some of the best stuff in the movie. I think that really helps to make this film work as well as it does. And once again, it does add some layers to what will eventually lead to Snow's tragic turn when he eventually becomes the evil president of the capital. So in a way, like it was interesting to see how much connection that Snow had to the districts and this person who was from the districts, and to eventually find out that that ends up being like a catalyst of how Snow turns as a person. I thought that was interesting. Just making the relationship between the two that much personal. So I thought all that stuff was very fascinating to see play out. Also, one of the other things that I really liked in this that I was wanting them to do in the previous films is seeing more of the capital and seeing how their society and system plays out. Of course, we've seen that the capital in Panem is the higher class of their nation, but it was interesting to see the insides of that, because Snow being from the capital and seeing how he ranks in the hierarchy and the classes and stuff like that. There's different ranks of classes in there, and it's even to a point where there's other people that look down on him as well. So it was just interesting to see that, from Snow's point of view, that he wasn't always the cream of the crop. So I thought that was interesting. And then seeing like more of Panem from back in the day, and seeing how the architecture and how their technology was different back in the day. I thought that was interesting. There was a mixture of that futuristic technology, but it had a retro type of feel to it. So I thought that was really cool aesthetic, really really cool aesthetic. And then as far as the other two big actors and actresses that we have here, Peter Dinklage. He's great in everything, so there's not too much I could say about him that hasn't already been said. But him being the creator of the Hunger Games, his name was Casca Highbottom. Casca Highbottom. That's an interesting name. But I thought he was really interesting. He was really, really interesting. Just because I didn't expect for us to see the actual creator of the Hunger Games, and just seeing his motivation of why he created the Hunger Games in the first place. I liked seeing that, because that's some of the stuff I wanted to see, of like, how did Panem come into power? How did the districts become how they were? And why was the Hunger Games created? So just seeing his mindset of why the Hunger Games were created, I thought that was pretty cool. And then Viola Davis being the game designer. Like, this is a role I have not seen Viola Davis in. And I haven't seen her do this performance before. She's pretty much like this mad scientist, and she's like hamming up the scenes that she's in. But she was so entertaining. I actually really really liked her in this. And once again, it's very similar with Peter Dinklage's Highbottom. Her character is Dr. Volumina, I think that's her name. I just, it's just also seeing her psyche of how she sees the games as well, and like with all of her, mad inventions and different like obstacles and science experiments that she makes for the games. It's just very interesting how she, her mindset is of how she's going about these games as well. So I just really really thought all of that was very interesting. As far as other supporting characters, I guess another highlight would be Josh Andres Rivera as Sejanus. I hope I said his name correctly. I thought he was pretty good too. He's one of those people that really dislikes the Hunger Games and thinks that the system that Panem has made is wrong, and like he's going against the hierarchy that Panem has made over the districts. And then he ends up befriending Snow as well. And for a while, it seemed like they were in agreement that the Hunger Games are barbaric and they'd want them to stop. So I thought all that was very very interesting. And then in this movie, they introduced this is the first time that they're introducing mentors for the participants in the games. So it was just cool to see how they first introduced that. And I thought to see that more explored in this film, the whole mentor stuff, and how the participants in the games don't want to have anything to do with these mentors from the capital and stuff like that, and just seeing a glimpse of the different dynamics between all the mentors of the different participants, I thought was interesting, especially between Snow and Lucy. I thought that was probably the most interesting part about it. Oh, also another person I forgot to mention was Jason Schwartzman as Lucretius. I think he's the father of Caesar, who was the host of the television stuff in the previous four games. I think Lucretius is the father of Caesar, and I thought he was really really good. I thought he was pretty funny. Like the wit that he has when he's hosting the games is probably some of the most entertaining moments of the movie. Like in his levity helped to balance out the really intense and dark stuff in the film. So I thought he was pretty good. And as far as the Hunger Games, this is probably some of the best build I've seen for Hunger Games in general. Like as far as like the build up and like the actual games itself, this is probably one of the most intense Hunger Games I've seen out of any of the movies. Like it's like almost on the same level as Catching Fire, even because I just really liked how all this was played out. And once again, it's in a different environment from the previous Hunger Games we've seen. Like it's in an actual like arena in a stadium and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. And just seeing the different weapons that they are using in here, and like so I just found all that fascinating. And like as far as like total wise, this probably is one of the darkest entries of the Hunger Games franchise. Like there was some really disturbing imagery in here that I did not expect for them to do, and I think it fit for the tone that they were establishing. Now getting to the elements that I didn't think was quite as strong in this. So the movie was split into 3 acts. Like there will be a blank screen, and the movie would say Act 1 and Act 2 and Act 3. And from what I hear from fans of the books, that's how they structure it in the books. So I'm assuming that this is trying to be very faithful to the books as well. So, but I will say the first 2 acts I thought were very, very strong. If it was just those 2 acts, and if the movie ended after Act 2, honestly, I would have considered this probably to be my favorite. I probably would have thought this would be the best Hunger Games if they just ended after Act 2. Now, one of the biggest criticisms I heard about this movie is when they get into Act 3. And yeah, like I'll say Act 3 I still think is very interesting. I don't think it was completely misplaced, but I feel like tonally and structurally it was different from the first 2 acts, and I felt like it really affected the pacing of this film. This is the longest film in the franchise, by the way. This is 2 hours and 38 minutes. I didn't expect for this movie to be that long. But for me personally, I was never bored even when we got to the 3rd act. Like I thought for the most part, like I was still invested in what was going on. But when we get to Act 3, it starts to go into a direction that was completely different from the first 2 films. And I don't know. It's like I think the stuff that they were introducing was fascinating, and without spoiling it, like the 3rd act was more into establishing how Snow starts to turn into the tyrannical dictator that he gets when we get to the modern era of Hunger Games. And part of me does appreciate that they're establishing how he got to that point and why he got to that mindset. And the stuff with Lucy Gray I thought was kind of tragic for what they were doing with those 2 characters. But part of me was even thinking, like, did we need to see it in this movie? Like, I get this is what they do in the books, so they want to show that, but like this takes place so far into the past. why did they even need to show it? Since there's so much time that passes between this and the events of the first Hunger Games, like it almost feels like that's something they could have saved for another movie. Um, because like I just thought it was interesting seeing Snow as a good person for this film. It's like it almost felt like they didn't need to explore that just yet. I think it would have helped to make this movie stand on its own a little bit better, because like that portion felt probably the most forced out of this movie, that we had to see the progressions of Snow turning evil in this. We had to put the pieces there, and we have to see him become that person by the end of the movie. And I argue that we didn't really need to see that. Like I appreciate them, showing that anyway, because I still think it was fascinating, but tonally and structurally, I just think it affected the rest of the film. And overall, I thought the pacing of the third act wasn't as intense as the first two. The first two was just like on the edge of your seat for most of those first two acts, but the third one, like, it slowed down stuff a little bit more. There was still intensity, but once again, it just structurally felt different. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a really solid entry in the Hunger Games franchise, and it's kind of helped me to get back into the Hunger Games in general. Am I for them making more films after this? I don't know. It really depends how their approach is, because I don't want them to go into a Fantastic Beast situation where it feels like they're making stuff up as they go. And it feels like they can only do so much with each movie being a different Hunger Games scenario. Like, it could be a cool concept to see how each Hunger Games is different for each year, and who knows, maybe I'll actually get to see a Hunger Games movie with Haymitch being in the games. Like, that's a movie that I actually would want to see as well. But I do see there can be other possibilities with them doing stuff in the Hunger Games universe, like stuff with the war, because they touch on the war in this movie. So like I would want to see a whole film with them exploring the stuff that went on with the war before the rise of Panem. So that would be interesting to see. They could also do a movie based on the first Hunger Games. Like, I'll be interested in seeing that as well. I also heard that the author of the Hunger Games books, Suzanne Collins, I heard that she's trying to make a trilogy out of the Songbirds and Snakes timeline. So we most likely will see an actual continuation about a Songbirds and Snakes in book form. So most likely that's how they're going to approach it from the movies. They're probably just going to wait for Suzanne to, write her next two books, and then they're going to make movies out of that. So we probably will be waiting for a minute until we see another Hunger Games movie. But I'm willing to wait. There's been time that's passed between Mockingjay Part 2 and Ballad, so I'm willing to wait as long as they're taking that time to make sure that the quality of the films are good. I'm open to seeing more. But yeah, overall, I thought the characters were really interesting. Once again, I thought seeing a younger President Snow was really, really cool. I thought Rachel Zegler as Lucy Gray was really good as well. Her singing was really great, and the relationship between Lucy and Snow was really good. Peter Dinklage and Viola Davis was really good. Seeing an older version of the Hunger Games was very fascinating. This is probably some of the best build I've seen for Hunger Games in all the movies. The third act, once again, I thought was probably the weakest out of the three, but I still thought was interesting. I just felt like they probably could have waited to develop the eventual reign of Snow as president. We could have waited to see that when he was older, but I still thought that stuff was very interesting. And getting more in depth with some of the districts I thought was pretty cool as well. So I will give the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, a B plus. That was really good. But yeah, that's what I thought about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. What did you guys think about it? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? Did you guys think it was okay? How does it compare to the previous four films? Was this a solid adaptation to the book? If you're not a fan of the books, did this movie do anything for you? If you're a Hunger Games fan, comment your thoughts down below and let me know. So yeah, I have successfully talked about all the Hunger Games films. If you guys enjoyed all of them, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit the bell if you want to be notified on future videos I'll be doing. But that's all I have for you Hunger Games fans, and I will see you guys next time. You have a happy Thanksgiving, happy Hunger Games, and may the odds forever be in your favor.